Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are setting up my January reading wrap-up, and I will admit I have been excited to get back to this journal. After setting it up back in December, I have been just anticipating getting back into this journal and filling it out for the first month of the year, and I loved the reception that I got from the original setup. But as you can see, we have my library card that I did last year and I'm doing again this year, and this is me just tracking how many books I read each month, and I'm using a Tombow brush pen. I do go back in later and use the gold pen again just because it is so hard to see the number on this. But yeah, I read 24 books in January, and I will preface this by saying I took the entire first week of January off and I didn't do anything except sit on the couch and read. So I got a little bit of a head start at the beginning of the year on my reading goals, but for the 24 books to read in 2024, I was able to read 2 off of this list, and that includes So Let Them Burn by Kamilah Cole, which is a debut YA fantasy, and then one of my most anticipated reads, Fae-bound, by one of my favorite authors, Sarah El-Arifi. Next up is my reading tracker spread. As I showed you before, this month I'm going to use this light blue Tombow brush pen for everything. I'm going to switch out the colored marker that I use each month just to make it align with the colorful flowers that I have. Last year I just used one pink marker and one pink marker only throughout the year, so I thought I would switch things up a bit this year and use more of my marker collection. But here I am, this is a pre-made template on sticker paper that I put in my journal during my setup, and so I'm just coloring in 24 corresponding squares to align with the number of books that I read. Moving on to one of my favorite spreads that I did this year, and that is my 2024 TBR. My first TBR that I have is my physical TBR, and I was able to read 2 books off of this, and that includes Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko and All of Us Villains by Amanda Foody and C.L. Harmon. I gave both of these 4 stars. And then moving on to my digital TBR, which is mostly my KU library that I need to get through, I was able to read another 2 books out of this, and that includes The Roommate Risk by Talia Hibbert and Wolf Willow Witch by Frady Moon, and again, both of these got 4 stars. And then for my ARCs to be read in 2024, I made a nice dent in this, and I read 4 of those. The first one being Unbound by Christy Healy, which I gave 3 stars, and then 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart by Jenna Rose Nethercott, I gave 3 stars to. Somewhere in the Deep by Tanvi Burwa, unfortunately just wasn't for me, I gave that 2 stars. But then the second book in the Emily Wilde series came out, Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Worlds, and I gave that 4 stars. Next up is a challenge that I do every year, my ABC challenge, where I just find books that correspond with the letter of the alphabet, and in January I was able to complete 5 of the letters of the alphabet, including All of Us Villains for the A, Fae-bound for F, So Let Them Burn for S, Unbound for U, and Wolf Willow Witch for the W. And then we have another couple trackers that I do every year, and that is my favorite book of the month, which for January was Fae-bound. And then our book club pick of January this year was The Shipping News by Annie Proulx, I believe, but the theme was a snow setting, and even though this cover does not convey that, yeah, that was our theme for January, so that was our book club pick of the month. And next we have my anticipated releases, and a lot came out in January, so many that I didn't have enough room to include all of them, but some of the ones that I was able to acquire actual copies of include That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, Dark Star Burning, Ash Falls White, Emily Wilde, book number 2, So Let Them Burn, Midnight Ruin, Sanctuary of Shadow, and Feybound. I even made this section larger because I noticed in 2023 I didn't have enough room for all of the books that would come out each month, let alone the long titles that authors are giving books now. But I was able to fit quite a bit on this, and there's even more coming out in February, so that will be interesting next month to see how many I can fit. And now we get to the good part, which is my January setup. I am doing something different this year. Last year, I dedicated an entire page just to the title, but this year I want to share every single book that I read each month instead of just a select few of my favorites. I will still review some of my top reads, but this page is going to be dedicated to covers of all the books that I read each month. So you can see I already kind of laid it out in advance just so everything kind of looked nice and neat. But for the title, I'm just putting some more of my flower stickers, just overlapping one another, and then I will just put January over that, and then each cover will get its own dedicated square. And then down in the right corner I have something that I thought was brilliant when I came up with it, but you'll see it later when I get it set up. But for now I am just going to get these stickers stuck and my title on, and then we will go through all of the books that I read in January. So as I mentioned earlier, I read 24 books in the month of January, and I totally understand that that is not a feasible number of books to read for a lot of people. So this is really how I'm able to read that many books during the month. And basically I took the entire first week of January off, and all I did was really read. A lot of the books I read were very short. I am doing a little mini challenge where I am reading this cozy mystery series where each book is only about 200 pages, so I can get through it in about a day or less. I'm also participating in a challenge on Storygraph, and one of the prompts this month was to read a children's book, and so again that took me about 10 minutes, but I still counted. And then I have read a couple other short novellas this month as well, and I also do listen to a lot of audiobooks at 2.5 the speed, so that also allows me to get through books quite quickly. But I'm also just a fast reader, and whenever I have free time, which is always in the evenings or on the weekends, I'm always reading. And no matter where I go, I always have a book with me as well. So if I'm in the car, I'm listening to a book, or if I'm waiting in line somewhere like the DMV or the doctor, I have a book on my iPhone that I'm reading. But yeah, I'm always reading. I don't have kids and I have a work from home job, so I am able to read more than the average person. But yeah, so these are the books I read, and I will go through 8 of my favorites later on, but I contemplated whether or not I should add these star ratings on this. I haven't decided yet. Maybe let me know in the comments if you want to see how I rated all my books, but I do rate them on Goodreads, so if you're interested, I suggest going to my Goodreads to see what I rate them. But here on this section, as you've noticed, I didn't really leave room for my stats, but I still wanted to do those this year, so I thought I would make this cute little kind of hidden door where I put my stats, but that did require me to limit them to only 4, but that's okay because I felt some of them were a little redundant and didn't really provide that much statistics, so I stuck with the genre stat, the demographic stat, the ratings and format. And for January, of course, no surprise, my number 1 genre was fantasy with 15 books, and then I read 5 mysteries. 3 books were LGBTQIA genre, and then 3 romance, 8 young adult, and 2 graphic novels. Then for my demographics, 10 were by Caucasian authors, and then I had 7 by Black authors. I had 3 by API authors, 3 by queer authors, and 2 by Latinx Hispanic authors, and then 2 by Middle Eastern or Arab authors. And then for my ratings, 2 were 5-star reads, and then I had 12 4-star reads. I had 8 3-star reads and 2 2-star reads. And then for the format, I had 50% were digital format, 46% were audio, and 4% were in print format. But yeah, I just absolutely love this little trapdoor, whatever you want to call it, that I came up with. In my mind, I thought it was a genius idea, and I just loved how it looked. So I think I might incorporate this into future monthly wrap-ups. And finishing up with my reviews, I am sticking to 8 reviews again, just like I did last year, but I am making it so that there are 2 reviews per page instead of 1 review per page, and I think I'm going to experiment with the layout. This isn't really a layout that I'm set on, I just wanted to see how it worked with this and the stickers that I incorporate, so I might do something different in February, but for this portion I just have kind of the small paragraph reviews with the cover, and then I'll incorporate some of my stickers. But the first book I read this year was The Center by Aisha Manazir Siddiqui, and I had this on my TBR for a long time once it came out. It just looks so fascinating, but basically it is a darkly comic boundary-pushing debut following an adrift Pakistani translator in London who attends a mysterious language school which boasts complete fluency in just 10 days, but at a sinister cost. This was a good start to my 2024 reading, and it featured a premise I've always wanted to basically have in real life, learning a new language in a matter of days. But in this case, there's an underlying mystery regarding just how the center is able to accomplish that, and once you find out, it's actually pretty gross. And then we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia, Emily's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which is the first book. The second book came out in January, but I absolutely loved the first book. It's about a curmudgeon-y professor who journeys to a small town in the far north to study fairy folklore and discovers dark fae magic, friendship, and love in this heartwarming and enchanting fantasy series. I thought this book was absolutely delightful. It has the reverse Grumpy Sunshine trope, a very charming setting, a lovable cast of characters, and some of the best fairy folklore I've ever read in a book. And also Wendell, our love interest, is just pure joy, and I love him so much. But I gave both of these books 4 stars. Next, we have my Cozy Mystery Reading Challenge that I am doing this year, and it focuses on the Campers and Criminals series by Tanya Kappas. I think at the moment there are 33 books in this series, maybe 34, 35, with a couple more coming out this year. And I have been listening to all of these on audiobook, and there isn't a single one that's more than 5 hours. So again, I can get through this in a day. And my goal is to read 1 book per week in this series. And so the first book of the series is called Beaches, Bungalows, and Burglaries, and it features our main character, Mae West, as she finds herself homeless, friendless, and penniless after her husband is arrested for a Ponzi scheme. All hope isn't lost, though. The only thing Mae got to keep that the government didn't seize is a tourist campground, happy trails in Normal, Kentucky, and an RV to live in. One problem, murder seems to be a common occurrence in Normal. This is the first book in a very charming and cozy mystery series following the residents of Happy Trails. But yeah, not only is every cover absolutely adorable, but each title features some sort of camping and murder-esque type of language. So far I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm already 4 books in, and yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And then we have next, which is my favorite book of the month, Faebound. This is by one of my favorite authors, Sarah El-Arifi. She also is writing the Endless Fire trilogy with the first 2 books, the Final Strife, and the Battle Drum, with the 3rd book coming out later this year. But this is the first in a new fantasy romance series of hers. And yeah, it was not only one of my most anticipated reads of 2024, But it also features so many of my favorite aspects that I love about fantasy, but it centers around Yiren, a warrior in the elven army, and her sister Lettel, a diviner seeking prophecies of a better future. When a fatal mistake leads to Yiren's exile from the elven lands, they are both forced into the terrifying wilderness beyond their borders, where they encounter the impossible, the Fae Court. This book has everything I love about fantasy: great world building, compelling characters, and an intriguing magic system, and even my favorite trope, animal companions. So, of course, I gave it 5 stars, and I highly recommend it. And moving on to the final 4 reviews I have for this month, we have Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. This has been on my TBR for quite some time. It is a young adult duology, with Raybearer being the first, and it revolves around Kitasei, who has always longed for the warmth of a family, but when she is sent to the capital to compete with other children to be chosen as one of the Crown Prince's Council of 11, she discovers a closeness that is irresistible to her. But her mother has other ideas, including a magical wish that Kitasei is compelled to obey: kill the Crown Prince once she gains his trust. The first in this duology was highly engrossing, brimming with heart and warmth from Kitasei and the others who become a part of the Prince's Council and the realm in which they are training to one day rule over. I gave it 4 stars. Next up is another young adult fantasy by a debut author, and that is So Let Them Burn by Kamilah Cole. This came out in January, and it was one of my 24 books to read in 2024, and this Jamaican-inspired fantasy follows a God's-blessed heroine who's forced to choose between saving her sister or protecting her homeland. Farron and Alara are 2 sisters devoted to one another and their country after 5 years of peace following a brutal war they both fought in. Now, with tensions rising again, they must separate for the first time in their lives and embark on their own journey to prevent war from ravishing their home once again. The world building, characters, dragons, and action were all engrossing, making this a great start to a new YA fantasy series. I gave this 4 stars as well. Next up is Will Fill a Witch by Freddie Moon, which is the second book in their Gideon series. This is a vicious romance imbued with magic, thievery, and necromancy. This follows Witch Taylor, who we meet in Heart Haunt Havoc, and her quest for power, teaming up with an old foe and working together to steal a powerful relic from a religious cult results in some crazy scenarios and a steamy romance, with a cliffhanger ending that promises for a great 3rd installment of this series. Bonus points, there's an animal companion. And lastly, we have one of the last books I read in the month, and that was graphic novel Squire by Palestinian-American author Nadia Shamas and illustrator Sarah Alfaghi, which features Asa, who has always dreamt of becoming a knight. It's the highest military honor in the once great Bayat Saji Empire, and as a member of the subjugated Ornu people, knighthood is her only path to full citizenship. Now she must navigate new friendships, rivalries, and rigorous training under the unyielding General Hende, all while hiding her Ornu background. But Asa will have to choose once and for all loyalty to her heart and heritage, or loyalty to the Empire. Squire features encapsulating illustrations, and a story about a girl realizing her dream of becoming a knight is built on imperialism and subjugation of the oppressed. I gave it 4 stars. And ending with a bit of flourish, here are my final reviews for the month of January. And here's my full flip through of my 2024 January reading wrap up. As you can see, I made the 24 a little bit darker just so we can see it. Thanks again for joining me today. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future videos. And if you're interested in the books that I plan on reading this year or any of the books that I read each month, go ahead and follow me on Goodreads or Instagram and TikTok, where I share some of my thoughts on additional books and provide more book recommendations. But until next time, everyone, happy reading.